Hey, boys and girls, guys and gals, moms and dads. Welcome back to another episode of Chopping It Up with ... And before I get to the name that comes after that ... just a quick setup for you new people here. This is I put up a video every Wednesday. We also simulcast this on the Duplication Nation MLM podcast. So if you want audio, workout on the treadmill or whatever, you can get the podcast versions. It's a project I'm doing with Jaime Loquier called DuplicationNation.com. If you haven't already, go to that site and sign up for the free newsletter. Go down to the bottom. You'll see there's an MLM boot camp. It's a 3-week kind of survival training like you'd go through if you joined the Army. Like, here's the 3, it's all free, 9 free lessons on just kind of how to survive through the beginning stages of the business so you're still around here for the successful parts later. All right, so each week on Wednesday, I chop it up with one of my brilliant friends in the profession. It's real world locker room talk, nothing, it's not scripted, it's not planned, and it's unedited, unadulterated, real world locker room talk. And we just have a conversation and you get to listen in on it. So this week, after the ... it is Ivan the Sisco Kid. Hey, my friend, it is so great to be back together with you.
Well, Randy, thank you. And what a treat to be here, and I'm so glad that we get to have just a conversation because, we've had several of them over the years of my past life. And usually it was you disciplining me if I got to spend more than a half an hour with you. But no, really so thankful to be here. And thanks for all the good work that you do. And I've had a chance to listen to some of the podcasts as of late and brought back a lot of memories. Just thank you for doing this, and thank you for allowing me to be part of it.
Did you see the one with Jeff Higginson yet?
Oh yeah, I mean that was so amazing for anyone that's in the corporate side of things. Anyone anywhere in the profession, but specifically those folks. Everyone needs to hear that. And when you have a chance to spend time with people like Higgy, who's all heart, who means well always, it's a real treat. So yeah, what a great show that was.
Yeah, I'm going to get more CEOs and founders in the mix on these shows as well. And he's just an example of one of the good guys in the space. A guy who I had some real knockdown, drag out fights with, right? Because he came into the space from the car business. He had never been in direct selling. He was used to running sales teams. Of course, we have some real different dynamics with duplication that don't apply in the car business or the insurance business. And so we butted heads on some things, but he was just, like you said, he's just a good-hearted guy, and he's committed to learning, and he really has learned the profession and, done amazing things for it. So and of course, we shared the experience with him in a company. So I'm glad you saw that show. And that's kind of where I would like to, you always think, how do I want to launch off the conversation? And some of these shows I've been doing what I call tag team storytelling. I start a story and then my partner finishes it. So let's see if you remember this story. We're in the company. We both have the same sponsor. We're cross line though, but we've become really good friends and we're working together on many things. And you called me one day and you're really distressed. It's really apparent to me and you're being very nice, and you're going through all these pleasantries about how am I doing and how's the weather, and and I'm like, dude, what's going on? Why are you calling me? And you said, I need to know, is duplication really real? So first, do you remember that? And if so, you want to continue the story?
I vaguely do, and it's we've had so many conversations, but one thing that you taught me of many things was how not to grind. And my first company, so the company you and I started working with was my second company. And my first company, I was there a little over 4 years. And the culture there was at the end of every month, you grind it out to try to reach a new rank or try to qualify. And everybody's calling everybody, panicking, trying to make things happen. And that's how I thought the business was done. And you had taught me something completely different. And, so that's how I was building, was like, at the end of every week, whatever that pay cycle was to get to another rank, we would be building hard towards that. And, like when you've got a funnel and you're putting people in and they all seem to be falling out the bottom, it's kind of, you're chasing. And you are constantly teaching this concept of, lifestyle and, shutting your phone off and setting boundaries around what you do. And I wanted to know if that was really possible. And, because sometimes if I would compare what I was doing those first 4 years, it would be much similar to what a real estate agent does or what a mortgage professional does. They're just trying to close business all the time to pay their bills. And so that idea of true mailbox residual money, I was wondering if it could be real, if you could actually step back from the business and have a business that would continue to work while you took a break or took a vacation or whatever it may be. So yeah, I remember that because I remember it clearly in the sense, if it wasn't for you, I may have never stopped grinding. I would have found my way out of the business completely. And, from those years, those early years in the company you and I were with, ever since, I've designed my life in a way that I've got boundaries and I don't grind. I believe what's going to happen, from doing the right things long enough. And, I'm all about that. So I've been able to design my whole life, my kids, my wife, I have life outside of business. But even though it all comes together,
Life.
yeah, right. It's beautiful. So, yeah, I remember that. And I don't want to just keep giving you props all day, but you taught me how not to grind. And that whole duplication piece is all of that, teaching people to do simple things, 20 levels deep, so thank you for that.
The thing I remember about that call was because I was so perplexed when you asked me that. And I was like, why is he asking me this? So I said, why are you asking me that? And you told me, well, I was talking with Eric, who of course was our mutual sponsor. And he told me, yeah, Randy, he talks about that duplication bullshit, but that's not really real. That's not how you build the business. The way you build the business is whale hunting. You gotta find somebody with a big team somewhere and roll them over. And that's, Randy's just kind of naive. He means well, but he doesn't really understand that duplication doesn't really exist. You gotta find these, whales and roll them over. And I think that, and I felt like that was a really pivotal conversation for us because it got a chance to really air that out. And I think there's so many people in our space who still fall prey to that because there's still a lot of quote big name leaders who that's all they know. And they've been around, particularly the zombies and the dinosaurs that I talk about in the Direct Selling Success book, that they've been around for 20 years or 30 years. And so they know everybody. And there's always somebody where the company just, cratered the comp plan, or they got shut down by regulators, or the CEO is a psychopath and, he blows up something or she blows up something. And then they're looking for a home. And so they've been fortunate that to be in, the moon was in the 7th house and Jupiter aligned with Mars. And they were there right when that leader was looking for a new home. And yes, they were able to roll them over. And, that brought in 7,000 new people over the course of the next 90 days. But that's not a business model. It's, and there's so many people that that's all they know. And so they just tread water until the next whale. But of course, when you bring somebody new in the business, they don't know any of those whales. They don't have a chance in hell of sponsoring any of those whales. Because the first thing a whale would say is, you just joined the ABC company, you're making $180 your first month. I've been pulling in $25K a month for the last 8 years. Why would I sponsor with a newbie like you? And there is no answer for that, right? Let me rephrase that. There actually is a good answer for that, which is, hey, yeah, I only make $180 a month, but I think I've really found a company with a product line with legs, a sexy product story. It's got an equitable compensation plan that rewards people for taking the right behavior. And I have a really strong sponsorship line who knows the business. And I would love to get you in a Zoom call with them and let them explain to you why this might be right. That could work. But if you're just thinking I'm going to go around and I get them, like I'm on LinkedIn, not that I ever do anything there, but at some point somebody told me you have to have a profile on LinkedIn. So I put a profile on LinkedIn. But that's really for the corporate world, right? But 3-4 times a week, I'll get a DM on there and they'll say, Randy, I have to ask, I know this is a long shot, but I just joined this new company and I know you're this titan of the industry, but if you would look, and I'm like, hey, God bless them. They're taking a shot on goal. You got to take shots on goal.
That's right.
But if they think that's going to be an effective business model, they're going to be really, really disappointed.
And unfortunately, Randy, my thought on that is when I see, so some people call it, going after leaders or whatever they want to call it. And it's like that law of reciprocity. Everything that seems to go really fast and great seems to come down goes up fast and great, comes down fast and great. And the sad part for me is how many of those people or those type of, if we're going to label them a leader, how quickly they will just leave their organization behind. And I struggled with that later in my career, watching so many people, they just didn't seem to care about people. And there's a lot of business owners outside of our profession that don't care about their staff or the people that they work with. But in this industry, I always like to think it's a little bit better, or it's supposed to be a little bit better. And we have people that are able to move. I don't even want to call them leaders. I have a question. I mean, are there any good leaders anymore? Are there any really good leaders? I think that whole word leadership, I have trouble even saying it because most people, I think, look, be a good example. Let's start there. Be a good example at whatever it is you do, how you treat your family, how you treat your business, how you are. Be a good example. That to me, that's way more powerful than XYZ leader. But I've seen people just come and go to this thing or to that thing and just leave everybody behind for whatever reason. And it's ugly to me.
I'm in the middle of my article for MLM Confidential, which for people who don't know is a newsletter Jaime and I put together for leaders. That's a paid newsletter. And if you're watching this show, you should be a subscriber already, because obviously doing 2-3 hour shows, long form content, this is not a show for tourists. There, if you're here listening to these shows, you've already demonstrated you're a leader in our profession. So I hope everyone watching, listening is already a subscriber. But the article, so I'm writing for this month's issue, is on that topic. You got to recognize Hitler, Mussolini, Idi Amin, they were all leaders, very successful leaders, right? The crazy nut in North Korea right now is a leader. Vladimir Putin in Russia is a leader. So a leader in and of itself isn't inherently good. You can be a inherently evil leader, like the people I'm referencing, or you can be a positive, empowering leader. And I'm glad you brought this up, because I'm in the art. I've just started that article, so it's still very much in the incubation stage. But what I've done so far is I've broken it down to 2 categories of the, let's say, the evil leader. And by the way, I don't equate an evil leader in network marketing at the same level as I would an Adolf Hitler. So don't anybody troll me, at me, cancel me. I'll make that very clear up front. We're not talking about people who commit genocides, for God's sake. But it's still, there are evil leaders in our profession. And we have to protect our team, our people, from those evil leaders. And I'm breaking it down into 2 categories. One is the ones who knowingly are evil, right? If you're out promoting, one of these crypto scams right now, there's no excuse. You're an evil leader. You have situational ethics. You have checked your conscience at the door and said, hey, with this kind of money I can make in this, I don't care if it's illegal.
Randy, you're saying everybody at this point should know. Like, we've seen the dead bodies behind all these crypto deals over the last 7, 8, maybe even 9 years. We've just seen it after. So if somebody's entering that space now, after seeing all the carnage left behind, they have to know that.
They have to know.
Yeah.
They have to know. And I was talking about this with, you won't have seen it yet. I did one of these with Jordan Adler, which will probably come out like the week before you or the week after you when this gets posted. And we both know people who've told us, like, yeah, I know it's a pyramid scheme. I know it's going to collapse, but this is my one shot. And if I can have a 2-year run with this and sock away $5 million, then I can do good things with that money. And they have sold their soul, right? So there are some people that do that. And at this point, if you're still, I think there's still areas of the world where OneCoin is operating. Cifra is still going, right? Yeah. Omega Pro it's the same cast of criminals. They've just changed the name to go global, right? So these are still operating. And if you're operating those in, May 2023, you've made a conscious decision that criminality is okay with you and hurting, because it's easy to say, well, it might collapse, but get the money when the money's good. I don't know, maybe they're not forgetting, but what I think some of them are forgetting is they're destroying lives with this stuff. There's people who, like, one of them is, at least one of them, probably all of them, they're really victimizing people in Latin America. That's where they've had their biggest traction, because network marketing is much less developed there, much less sophisticated, and the poverty levels are just over the moon. And so it's desperation that drives people to them. But I mean, they have people going and taking out their kids' college fund, taking all their retirement money. They have people putting second and third mortgages on their homes and telling them, put that money with us because we're guaranteeing 300% profit a month. They're destroying lives. So it's not just, hey, we'll have a fun time and then, I'll go and do something, honest again. So there is that part, which they just are knowingly, morally, ethically empty, and they can do that, and they can still look themselves in the mirror. And then I think there's the premise of this next article is that there's another much bigger group, and these are the evil leaders who don't even know they're evil leaders, because they don't know that they are teaching something that's toxic and dysfunctional. Like, when your sponsor told you, no, it doesn't exist, just go whale hunting. Well, that worked for him because he was in the space and he could hunt whales. It wasn't working for you because you didn't know a bunch of those whales. You weren't going to be able to get those results. And anyone you bring in isn't going to know those whales. They're not going to be able to generate those results. But you have people who are creating this culture of, hey, we got to get people to rank advancement. And so every month, we're going to pick 10 people, and then 10 of the leaders are each going to commit $1,000, and we're going to buy $10,000 worth of kits underneath these people, and they'll break the ranks and get the pin and walk across the stage. And we're going to create lots of hype. We're going to create the appearance of growth, the appearance of rank advancement. And Jaime and I had experience working with a company, that looks so amazing on the surface. And then when you get under the hood and you say, holy fuck, because I get the real figures. In other words, I'll tell the CEO, CFO, or VP of marketing, all right, I want a printout of the top 100 distributors. I want to know, black out their names. I don't want to know anybody's personal business. But you black out the names. I want to know what rank are they at? What rank are they qualifying at? What is their paid as rank? What's the highest rank they read? How much are they really earning? And we've had instances where literally 80% of the top ranks are not qualifying in a monthly basis. It's an evil culture. They're creating ghost distributor accounts, and everybody's just making up customers to game the comp plan. And then they have people going down and buying these kits underneath. And they don't do it because they're evil. They do it because they think that's how they help their team, because that's what they learned. Yeah, that's what they learned from some other company they worked with, somebody who told them, this is how you create growth. You fake it till you make it. And if we get all of these people to qualify for 1 month at this prestigious rank, then the excitement will be created, which will make it really work. But it doesn't really work.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. I mean, I think about somebody that I respected who lives down in Miami. And I was doing fine in a company, had a great income, and I made a mistake in 2018 that took me out of the business for almost 4 years. And I went to a startup company. It was about a year old. It was a shiny new toy. Lots of people were making lots of money. And you called me. I don't know if you remember this. You were like, it was either if you called me or text me or something, but you're like, I need you to be careful with that.
I don't even remember that. Wow.
Especially the people that are running it. And of course, literally within less than 60 days, I pulled out and basically resigned from the industry. And the fella that sponsored me, he's now dealing with all this Omega Pro stuff now. And it's, so I find some folks get to a high level in our profession that the pride and the ego and the lack of humility, they feel like they need to one up someone else, and they'll do whatever's good people, and they'll find a way to set something up that's going to make them look better than somebody else. Because there are some great companies in our profession. Why not just choose one and be amazing in one of those companies versus, so I see that happening a lot where good people, and they have to be completely driven by money or insecurity to be the best. If somebody's making $1 million a month, I need to make $1,100,000 or whatever that number is, right? And that's where their head's at. It's not about helping people. It's not about making our world better. It's not about contribution. And people are ending up in jail now for it. I never thought I'd see that, but people are. I remember you used to tell a lot of stories about back in the day, people would, could go to jail for stuff. And I'm like, I don't know anyone in this profession who's ever went to jail. Over the last 8 to 10 years, I've seen people go to jail, or certainly have serious lawsuits against them over illegitimate companies.
Yeah, the dynamic that changed that these Ponzi crypto scheme people haven't taken into account is the regulators have now said, you know what? It's not enough to keep putting these company owners in prison. We are going to have to put the top distributors in prison. It's not enough just to seize the assets of the company. We're going to need to seize the assets of these top distributors who are promoting and making these claims. Because I can't even remember his name, but it's in the MLM Confidential newsletter. There's a guy who just got out of prison for running a Ponzi scheme like 8 months ago, and he started a new Ponzi scheme. He literally just got out of prison for doing that. And because I don't know, what else does he know? So we're, in this newsletter, we name names every month. We tell people, watch out. This guy is doing this, or this, this crazy token deal has now created a new worthless token. They're selling air, but now the regulators are coming in and saying, okay, Mary, you worked 4 years for that company, which we consider an illegal pyramid. You made $650,000. We want all of that money back. Oh, and by the way, you also took $220,000 worth of tax advantages because you said, I'm flying, I bought 2 first-class tickets to Barcelona to go to the convention, and I spent $8,000 on hotels for the retreat. And they say, because you were working in an illegal pyramid, all deductions that you made while working that pyramid are now void. So we need that money as well. And most of these people, they're running on the hamster wheel. They're spending more than they're making because they got to fuel the hype machine. They don't have that money for restitution. They're wiped out. They lose, like Mike Sims right now. He's turned state evidence against Omega Pro, but they are seizing everything of his. And I don't think it's going to have a very happy ending for him. But I've been banging the drum. Other people have been banging the drum saying, guys,
well, you're not, hey, one thing hasn't changed. You're not afraid to throw out names.
you got to keep it real. It's like I'm an open book about everything. People write me and they'll say, listen, I didn't want to put this on your blog, but what I don't agree with you. I think you're wrong. So I wanted to tell you private. And I'm always like, do me a favor, please put that on the blog. I think that's a great point you raise, and I would love to put that debate into the public square. Let's have that discussion. Even Jaime will send me a message. He sent me a message, and he said, because I posted something, we have a WhatsApp group for all of our project managers who work on Duplication Nation. So I put something in the group that was wrong. I had assumed something that wasn't right. And so he said, hey, I'm sending you a private message because I don't want to embarrass you in the group, but you said that the sky was orange, but the sky is actually blue. And I told him, my friend, by now you should know you don't have to protect me in that way. I have no problem at all if you get in the group and say, Gage, what the fuck are you smoking today? Don't you know the sky is blue? That's a real relationship. That's where real connection can happen. That's where real things can get done. And I try to. I don't want to count anybody else's money, right? I don't want to judge the decisions that people force themselves into making. I had a friend who I got this call from, I was on the road. Ford calls me and I'm doing a seminar somewhere. And he says, hey, listen, you need to change your plan, your travel, because I got you booked next Friday for a convention in, wherever. I'm like, how many people? He says, like 3,000 people. Like, how does a convention of 3,000 people be booking the speaker 5 days before the event? Obviously somebody canceled, right? He said, I don't know. They called yesterday. They asked for info. I sent your demo video. They watched the demo video and they FedExed a deposit for the contract and they want you there next Friday. So I'm like, okay. And I was still on the road finishing up this thing. So I go and I go the next Friday to the event and it's a scam. I'm just doing a keynote speech, right? I'm not endorsing it. I'm not promoting it on whatever. They hired me. I come in and I do the opening keynote. But I'm like, because I always hang around. I want to know what's going on. What are other people doing? And they're explaining how when you sign up a new distributor, you have to put their check or their cashier's check, because there's no credit cards. They have to put a cashier's check or a money order. So not even check, cashier check or money order. And you have to FedEx it to the company headquarters. Well, I know right away. Why do people do that? Because they think it will protect them from going to prison there's a specific federal felony called, I don't remember the name, but it's when you use the postal service to defraud people. Maybe the name will come to me. So they think, well, if we have people send it by FedEx, then we can't get arrested for this postal thing. But it's not true. You could use FedEx, UPS, whatever. You're still going to go to prison. But they don't know it. It's like the drug dealers who say, are you a police officer? Right? They think that if you're a police officer, they think you have to admit it, right? I'm assuming they've never watched Miami Vice or The Wire or, a TV show. But this is like one. So I realized this at the convention, at the thing I'm speaking. The next session, they're talking about how people have to send everything by FedEx with cashier's check. I'm like, oh my God, now I know how I got in this. Probably whoever the original speaker they booked found out it's a scam and they pulled the plug. But meanwhile, I get a call a few months later from a friend of mine and they want him to come and do an event because they want credibility. And I'm like, dude, you need to know it is absolutely a pyramid. It's a scam, And he took the gig. because he needed the money. And so I'm like, I have been at the depths of poverty, right? I have been at stages in my life when people say, I'm broke. And I was like, you know what I would give to be broke? I need to get $55,000 just to qualify for broke, right? So I don't want to, and I don't know, but there's just the level of the criminality is where it's at today. It's just, I've never seen that before in our space. That, and I mean, it's so obvious, and people have already been arrested. People have already gone to prison. People have already had their lives destroyed. And you're still promoting that thing? I mean, it's just crazy.
Well, even almost as bad as you'll have successful leaders in different companies, and over on the side, they're throwing some money at some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And that's great if you're able to do it and you're not risking anything and it's your money, your play money or whatever. But they're telling their friends, and I'm seeing a lot of that. They're not going to be the face of it, but they got a little foot in it, and that trickles, right? It trickles, and
it keeps them going. And so, and yeah, it doesn't kill them because that's their little flyer they're taking, but they are choosing to ignore the fact that the vast majority of those people, it's not a flyer. They're putting their blood, sweat, and tears into it. And they are taking out mortgages and taking their kids' college fund, and they're buying these worthless NFTs or these worthless tokens or these, or they're operating in some illegal thing where they're selling unregistered securities or unregistered insurance or unregistered currencies. And it's like, I don't know if you saw this, just last week it came out that Taylor Swift turned down $100 million contract with SBF and the FTX cryptocurrency thing. They offered her $100 million to do the things that Tom Brady and Larry David and all, even Steph Curry got in that, and some what I think are good people got sucked into that thing and became spokespeople. Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank was like their number one fan, and he was gotten all this under the table sweetheart deals. And they offered Taylor Swift $100 million to be one of the sponsors. And she said, well, she had one question. She said, can you show me why this is not the same as selling unregistered securities? And because they couldn't answer that question, she turned down the deal. And, she is so young, but I can't even think of anybody who has run their career better than Taylor Swift. At this young age, who just navigated the music industry, which is a cesspool of exploitation, right? And she changed her genre, she changed her label, she was going out, she's been remastering her old albums so that now she owns the rights to all of her songs, and she's doing amazing. But she was the only one who had the common sense to say, well, can you answer this simple question?
Well, hey, if the last few years have shown us anything, it's exactly that.
The other thing that we need to say, because I don't want people to because these are the things that are getting the attention right now, because they need to, because we have to inoculate people against them. But it's like when I did the show with Jordan Adler, he got in like an industry mastermind group, and he was shocked that they had all of these young guys in their 20s and 30s who were, been in the business for a year, and they're making $30,000 a month, and They don't do any home meetings. They don't do any presentations. They don't do any invitations. They're just, social media influencers. And so he said, do you think that our OG model is over? And I said, no, I think that what you saw in your mastermind are people who aren't living in reality. And that because what he had mentioned, that most of them are doing Forex deals and stuff like that. I'm like, that's not a real product, Jordan. It's not a legal product, right? You can have a foreign currency exchange, but you can't have a MLM comp plan based on a foreign currency exchange and sponsor people who are not licensed, regulated brokers, to do that stuff. They've taken what on the surface is a legitimate legal entity trading foreign currencies, but you've made it illegal. So yeah, of course they're making $30,000 a month, but where are they going to be next year? And the story that we have to get out is all of those lifetime master coordinators in Shackley who started building a business 40 years ago, and they're still getting their check every month. The Amway distributors who started 50 years ago, and now their children are in the business and their grandchildren are in the business. And these other, OG companies that have been around that are running legitimate things. And the distributors in those deals, they're not writing books. They're not doing seminars. They're not paying off the guy on that work from home site to get their name featured as making so much money a month. You know what I mean? They're just going about their business, minding their own business, and they're making $20,000 a month residual income, $40,000 a month residual income. Some of them are making $80,000 or $100,000 a month residual income, and nobody outside of their company has ever heard of them. And that's the story. And those are people that I'm going to get in this show, right? That's, one of the reasons I wanted you in. You're not out doing a bunch of seminars and, advertising your name and writing 10 books. You're just a guy minding his own business, working the business with your wife, building your dream, doing the building blocks of the fundamentals of the business.
I think you reminded me of something, and I was thinking about 2008 a little bit, and we were riding pretty high in 2008 when the economy wasn't doing too well, and it just really got me thinking. When we think about what's happening in the economy right now, and then we look at the last I don't know what the number will be. Let's just call it the last 10 years of crypto games. I think now more than ever, like I've seen people go from crypto deal to crypto deal to crypto deal, and many of them are gone, but many of them still have a dream for their life. Many of them still hopeful that they're going to knock it out of the park one of these days and are looking for a real opportunity to improve their situation. And I think there's a lot of people right now, talented people, that got taken down that path that are now looking for something real. They're like, okay, I just wasted the last 5 years. I just wasted the last 8 years. And we know this profession is the best. Now it's time for me to find something real, roll up my sleeves again, and actually do what's required to build a real business to get those kind of residual checks that you're talking about. And I think there's going to be a big movement around that. What are your thoughts?
I do too. I do too. I'm really optimistic because we know it's a very counter-cyclical business, and I won't say unfortunately or fortunately believe. I just believe that we're in a worldwide recession, and it's going to get dramatically worse, and millions of more people will be laid off, and jobs will be eliminated by technology and progress. And I think it'll be a golden era for our business, I think the next few years. So in 2030, people will be looking back and saying, man, 2020, just like you said, man, remember 2008? Why? Because of the recession. We were killing it in 2008 because hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of people who never would have considered network marketing before were now considering it. And now, if in 2023, how many hundreds of thousands of people work in the cruise industry? If you take one of those big signature cruise liners, they have 5,000 employees on one ship. One ship, 5,000 people. So you take Carnival and, the Celebrity and X and, these big cruise like Disney, Branson had a cruise company. And all of a sudden, every one of those ships was shut down. So times 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 employees on each of those, who all of a sudden said, maybe the cruise industry isn't the most glamorous career I thought it was.
Yeah.
If you worked for British Airways, Lufthansa, American, Delta, Southwest, and you were laid off for 2 years, you're probably saying, maybe the airline industry isn't as secure as I thought it was. If you worked in a shopping mall and the entire mall was shut down with COVID quarantine for 6 months, you're probably thinking, maybe my retail career is not as promising as I thought. The movie business, the restaurant business, the nightclub business, all right? So you have millions of people just because of what we went through in the pandemic who are rethinking their life. Now, look at, what do they call those companies? The really sexy tech companies, Apple, Amazon, whatever, there's a acronym for them. But look at the layoffs in that space. And these are not entry-level busboys and dishwashers. These are people with PhDs and master's degrees who, engineers and managers and vice presidents and thousands of, Facebook laid off another 11,000 people a couple of days ago. Twitter has eviscerated their employee base. Apple, everybody has had to cut back. And all those people and millions more are going to happen. And all those people are now going to be open to look at network marketing, and they're going to start, millions of them are going to say, I don't ever want to trust my security to a paycheck from someone else ever again. I want to create my own destiny.
Yeah, and when I look around, we're constantly hearing, look, there's all kind of work if you want to work. We know lots of business owners that own businesses and they can't find people to work. But I also know lots of executives that, like you said, who've lost their positions and they can't find work. It's like, I'm not paying attention enough to that space, but I'm hearing it nonstop. I hear these small business owners that just can't find anyone to work. And then everyone's saying there's all kind of jobs right now. If you're not working, it's because you don't want to work. But there's lots of executives out there right now looking for work or taking a position that's paying them less. So there's a lot to what you're saying. And it seems like it's only going to get worse.
And, the nature of human nature is we accelerate our financial footprint based on our earnings. So the people who were executives at Caribbean Cruise Line, whatever, the people who were managers at the theme parks, the people who were, was it Disney, I think? It was at Marvel. They just laid off the guy who was responsible for bringing Marvel to whatever, a new category. This was a guy who made like $500,000 a year. So he lost his job. Okay, when you're laying off, and that's how it was presented, as he was in the round of the layoffs. a guy who was making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Well, it's true. He can get out his phone and he can get into his Lamborghini and he can start driving Uber or delivering for DoorDash. Okay, but that ain't going to make the payments on the Lambo. That isn't going to make the $15,000 a month mortgage he's got. It isn't going to pay the private school for the 4 kids he has in, right? So, yeah, anybody could get a job, but they have built this bigger financial footprint, and the kind of jobs available right now aren't really going to address that need. And I think you know what the other thing that happens, and nobody's talking about this, is it isn't just the money. It's how many people have rethought their life, their career and their life.
Thank you.
After the pandemic.
I'm one of those people, Randy. I mean, I was thinking about this a little bit. In 2018, I took a step back from the profession. I went and bought a financial planning practice, and I was good at it, and I liked it. And the real reason why I did it is I was always so bad with money. Made money, that old saying, you make money and keeping it are two completely different skills. And I really wanted to learn about money. And my thought was, look, how many entrepreneurs do I know that are terrible with their money? And I want to help those people. But anyway, I built this practice. But when COVID decided to, make things really difficult, or our government made things really difficult for my children to live their lives.
Well, in your case, for people who don't know, you live in Canada.
Yeah.
In your case, your government was fucking insane.
Yeah, insane. So our kids could not do anything. This is a little bit of a personal piece, but my son, he's a hockey player, and he's in high school, and that he could only play hockey if he got vaccinated, and he didn't want to get vaccinated. And but he said, Dad, look, I'm going to do it. We don't know what the outcome of it will be, but I'm going to do it because I want to play hockey. That's more important to me than whatever the risks are that are associated. So I said, okay, son, great. So he went and did it, and I went and did it with him because I wasn't going to let him do it alone. And he's been sick ever since. Not deathly sick, but sick. His immune system's all messed up. He's constantly sick. He's constantly this and that. But then they wanted to go after my little girl, who was 11 at the time. And that's when we picked up and moved to Florida. And but so here I am. I have this financial planning practice that I can't do in Florida because of compliance reasons.
Because your clients were Canadian and based on the Canadian tax laws and
Correct.
All that stuff. Okay.
Correct. So I just walked. I left it all. And because money, we can always get more money. So we went to Florida and we had a wonderful time. It was like an extended vacation for many months. We stayed down there as long as we could. But it was liberating for me because I made the decision during that time that never again would I be in a situation where I couldn't move my family if I needed or wanted to. Yeah. And that whole work from anywhere piece, right? So you're talking about people reevaluating their lives and what they've learned. And I don't want to be in a situation where I don't have absolute, and network marketing is the only way that I know that I could get that type of freedom for myself and my family. And, I haven't lived through a war, right? But I could tell you some of the decisions we had to make, it felt like it. It was really tough. But anyway, I don't know how I got off on that tangent. The tangent is people are reflecting and looking for better ways. And network marketing is certainly a wonderful option.
Network marketing is amazing. And we have to do a better job of getting that awareness out there. There are people join the business. They have this job they just hate. So they join the business and they want to be wealthy and happy and successful. And then it doesn't happen in 4 months. It doesn't happen in 6 months. And then they quit after they've really put in work, really built in foundational stuff. and then they quit and go back to the job that they, stay with that job that they hate, that they know there's no future for. We've just, I don't know what, like the show I did with Dana Collins, that was a topic we discussed, is we have got to do a better job of being right up front and telling people this is hard work. We got to stop trying to compete with the schemes who say, yeah, I made $10,000 my first month, because it's like, okay, why stop at 10,000? If you just rob banks, you could make $100,000 your first month. So why would you, settle for 10,000? Well, there's a reason people don't rob banks, because it has a terrible retirement plan. It has a terrible, at some point you end up in prison or dead. So let's not go down that route, And same with these Forex and crypto scams and money games and airplane games and Ponzi schemes. I'm just so, these last 6-7 years, I'm so about, I haven't given an income testimonial in 8 or 10 years. I haven't talked about being a millionaire in 8 or 10 years. I'm talking about, hey, I want you to give me 1 year. Don't look left, don't look right. Just follow the fundamentals I teach you. And after 12 months, let's evaluate. And what I've got for you is a 2 to 4 year plan, or a 2 to 5 year plan. And if you'll pay the dues, if you'll do the work, it'll be there. And then, it works for me because I do have that lifestyle, right? I do show a quality of life because I built it. I took a 2-year sabbatical, 2 years without recruiting anyone, without posting on social anything, and kept my income solid, even up a little bit for 2 years. That's the story we got to get out for people, that the magic of leverage, the magic of escaping the trading hours for money trap.
Yeah, and we spent the better part of this hour talking about some of the things that aren't so great about our profession, and there's a reason why we do this, and we do it because it's better. It's amazing. And I want to talk to you just for a moment about honor. And I'm going to bring up a story from many years ago. And, Randy, you've never set an appointment with me and not shown up on time. You've never said you were going to do something and not followed through and did it. Never, not one time. And I don't know many people that call themselves leaders that are like that. There's not a lot. So I'm thinking back, I don't know what year this was, but you still probably believe there's more moose than people up here in Atlantic Canada.
Well, there is.
Right? And you've made the trek up here many times. And actually, I'm now going to go off on another tangent, but I can't think of how many times I've picked you up at the airport in the winter. And you're like, you'll call me when you land. You're like, okay, here's the deal. I don't want you coming into the airport to carry my bag. I need you to pull up to the door as close as you can get to that curb and have the car running so I can step outside and jump in the car
with the seat heaters on.
With the seat heaters on. And so we just had so much fun. But I remember a time where
is this the St. John story?
Well, it's multi-city story. So,
okay.
So we have a 3-city tour set up for you, and we've got packed out events. And I think it's probably like a Thursday morning or something, and we've got a snowstorm up here in Atlantic Canada. And you call me and say, hey man, like the airport is not letting us fly out. I don't know what I'm gonna do. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, you're like, I'm going to call you back. And I'm thinking to myself, oh man, we're going to have to, cancel the events, or we're going to have to do it without Randy. Everybody's coming to see Randy. They're not coming to see me. And what are we going to do? So Randy calls back about a half an hour later. Yeah, no problem. I've got a private jet coming up there, and we're going to do a tour. And so you spent your own money to get a plane, and you flew up here privately. I don't know if it was in St. John or Fredericton where we went first, and then we went from there in a private plane to Halifax, and then we went from there to Toronto probably. And that was my first time flying in a private plane. So that was another great experience. But the moral of that is, I was listening, I'm jumping around here a little bit, to Orion Saleh. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Orion Saleh.
So I've watched you spend time with Orion for a long time. I know you're very close friends, and he always seems like a really nice guy. He always seems humble. He's well-spoken. And I listened to the podcast of you two, and I really enjoyed it. And I love his heart. I always thought he was a heartful guy. I don't know him, but from the distance, I'm like, that's somebody. Yeah, that's somebody I'd like to spend time with, I've always thought. And when he kind of called you out a little bit, or wanted to challenge you a little bit about a photo of during this pandemic stuff. And I'm watching a lot of people right now who had one set of beliefs, and maybe they've changed their beliefs a little bit, but they're not willing to admit it or take responsibility for it, or if they hurt other people in the midst of that. And I watched you gracefully say, look, I have a different perspective now than I had at that time, in that moment. And I was listening to this. I was hanging on to every word, Randy, and I loved it. I mean, there's very few people, again, that are willing to own whatever is coming their way, good, bad, or indifferent, but certainly the bad. And I loved it. And it reminded me of that time when you didn't have to get a private plane and spend all that money in the winter, and we had to pay a bunch of extra money de-icing the thing every time we took to a different city. And I'm just like, you're always honorable. And there's been times I listened to some of your stuff over the years, and I'm like, oh, here's Randy going. But mostly in all this time, you've been right, or very close to right. And it's always been like, there's a lot of people that don't understand your opinion on this whole crypto stuff. They're like, oh, Randy's too strong in this. He doesn't really know. But you are right. And it's not about being right or wrong. It's about being being strong enough to say your opinion, no matter what kind of pushback you're going to get. But when you're not right, it's okay to say, I'm sorry. And I'm sorry if it hurt other people. None of us are perfect. We're just trying to find our way through and get better every day. But anyway, you flying up here for that tour that we did was life-changing for me. For so many different reasons.
Here's the funny part of that story. I had forgot all about that. Here's the funny part to show you just the stupidity of American Airlines. So back at the time, this is whenever, but it's probably along that run that started at 2008, where we were just, we had our target on our backs because we were the sexiest company in the space, making the most noise. And I was still wearing ties and $10,000 bespoke suits and $15,000 bespoke shoes from Labs of London. And so I had this tour for Ivan's team up in Canada. And you're right, it might have been Fredericton, might have been the first one, and then St. John or whatever. But it's whichever one was like the island. You need an extra plane to go that island off the coast. Is that Fredericton? Or
well, that could have been Halifax. It's another, but Nova Scotia. It's not really an island, but because we didn't do Prince Edward Island that time, I don't think. But
so it was something like that.
Yeah.
But so I go to so I've got 3 or 4 suits, 3 or 4 shoes. I have in those days, I'm still doing checked luggage. So I have my carry-on, and then I checked luggage, because back then it was all about the bling bling. I got to pack $300,000 worth of watches and $50,000 worth of shoes, because I'm going to impress people with all of this money that I'm making. Because that's where we were at that point that's where I was at that moment in the space-time continuum. So I get to the airport at like 90 minutes before. Back then, you had to check in, you had to wait in the line, and I was in the million-miler line, first class line, whatever level elite line, but still there's like 50 people in front of me, because American Airlines is so understaffed. The airport is a zoo. So I finally get to the counter at 55 minutes before the flight. And so it wasn't that they weren't flying, they were flying, but they told me, oh no, you can't check luggage, because all checked luggage has to be checked 1 hour before the flight. So we leave on time. I'm like, I've been in the line for 35 minutes. I got here 90 minutes before. You have two desks serving these 80 people, because there's 30 or 40 behind me. That's why I wasn't here. I need to check this bag. They're like, no, you can't check the bag. You make a choice. If you keep the bag, you'll have to take a later flight. Or if you want to take this flight, you can't bring the luggage. So I'm like, it's 55 minutes before the flight. I don't have time to take my suitcase home. I'm doing some quick arithmetic, and I'm thinking, my checked bag is worth at least $80,000 because of these shoes and these $10,000 Brioni suits and whatever. And I'm like, I don't want to just throw away $80,000. So I'm like, this is your fault. You're not and you can't tell me in 55 minutes you still don't have time to get that suitcase on the plane. And when's the last fucking time an American airline flight left the gate on time anyway? The last time that happened was the Reagan administration, for God's sake. Check the damn bag. No. So I say, fuck it. There's some other airline that goes to Toronto. So I turn around and I leave, and I say, I'll go down to Delta. I'm a platinum medallion, Starfleet commander. Oh no, we don't have a flight. I go to United. Oh no. I just keep going to there's nobody going to, I think I was changing out of Toronto. So now I'm really, because I remember there was going to be 600 people that you put together for that event, the first thing. And so I'm apoplectic, and I'm like, okay, I don't control this. I need to take a deep breath. So I see there's a day spa there. And I say, okay, I'm going in. I'm getting a foot massage. I'm getting a little tea. I call my travel agent, book me a private jet that I can get to Toronto and then on to, wherever, and to St. John or Fredericton or whatever it is. And yeah, half an hour later it took. So she calls me back and says, well, that's going to be $25,000. I'm like, it is what it is. And you were in a lesser leg that made no additional income for me, right? All I would do.
Hey, was that weak leg worry?
Just for the record, you said that. I didn't. So for people who don't know, like binary comp plans, this really your line doesn't bring me any extra income. I'm maxed out on that line. So, but what you said, I'd given my word, and I knew there's going to be 600 people at that first event. And wherever it was the connections were so bad, because you had to go to Toronto, you had to change your plane, and then there was some like a puddle jumper plane to this island, whatever it was. But the private guy, he could just go there. So I'm like, And then once you do that and you're like, oh my God, it's just, this is the way to travel, And I think, well, why should I go back to those other tickets for the other cities? I'll just keep this guy because, he just says, Mr. Gage, what time would you like to leave tomorrow? That's when the flight is, right? And that's when I called you and Glenn and said, hey, cancel your tickets. You all can fly with me. We're just going to have fun. And then it was exactly what you said. Canadian snowstorms, and they're like, oh, we have to de-ice the wings. I'm like, okay, what's big deal? Of course you got to de-ice the wing. Well, no, I don't think you understand. That's an extra $2,500 to de-ice the wings, And so God only knows what that ticket thing. But yeah, I just Terry Petrovic and Terry was in my team in a different company. And he lived in, I think, Raleigh, and my flight got canceled. So I found a flight to Charlotte and rented a car in Charlotte. And I was changing my shirt in the car for a home meeting where he had like 8 people. And I drove 3 hours or 4 hours or whatever from Charlotte to Raleigh or Raleigh to wherever. Because that's what you got to do. If people count on because even, and I remember Glenn, talking on the plane, like, how do I explain this to the other people in the company that you're doing this for a lesser leg, that you get no extra income out of? Because that's what I hear all the time. They tell me, well, no, why would I ever go and work down and support that team in ABC City? Because, I don't make any extra money from that. But what they don't understand is you build that trust, you build that security, right? So, even though you may not get more income out of that leg per month, you're building the long-term security. And that it's the relationships that you just said that. I had completely forgot about that story, but that's why we're having this conversation today, because we still have an enduring friendship, 10 or 15 years later.
Yeah, it really is amazing. And it really puts things into perspective. It really, really does. So switching gears, where do we go from here? I've got a question or a thought I'd like to ask you. So I made a comment earlier about, are there any good leaders left? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I forgot I was going to continue in that vein and I got sidetracked. I think we have better leaders than ever in our space, and they're really developing in amazing ways. Because now we have this later millennial generations coming into the business that were never in the business when I started off. When I first began, you would never waste your time with anybody under 35 years old. You'd never waste your time on anybody over 55 years old. That was the demographic, 35 to 55, because by the time they're 35, they have a mortgage, they have a car payment, they figured out they're not going to be joining the NBA, they're not going to be the next, Madonna, they're not going to be the next Messi. They are working the job they're working with the job they got and the credit card debt they want, and they realize, okay, this horse I'm riding isn't going to take me to where I want to go. With network marketing, I got a shot, right? And people over 55 were like, hey, this is just the way it is. I'm going to retire soon. I'm going to get my retirement, Social Security or whatever it is where they live. And you had to get them in that dynamic, that demographic of 35 to 55. Now we have people killing the business who are 23, 27, 30 years old. And they're doing it with social media, with mobile apps, with, in new and exciting ways. And they're learning from the people who went before them, and they recognize, hey, there are timeless principles that transcend time and generations and languages and countries. And there's new exciting ways to, technology we can harness. And the other thing, so I think we got some really amazing people. For people who didn't see this, the chopping it up I did with Daniel Song, he'd be a good guy to see. Another one coming up, Marco Passanante, with some dynamic young people who are killing it. And then again, I would go back to, there's so many of those unheralded ones who aren't writing books, and they don't have 50,000 followers on Instagram because they don't even have an Instagram account. They're just minding their own business, working with their team. They've developed a strong client base. They're working in depth. They've done the building block stuff, and they're living really their dream lifestyle. And they don't need to telegraph it to the world. If you're a Diamond Direct in Iowa who's making $212,000 a year, that's a very nice income in Iowa. If you're a Manatech leader in Mexico, I don't know if they're there, but let's assume they are, and you're making $5,000 a month in Mexico, you're living like a king, right? So we have helped so many people live their dreams, and those are the true leaders that, and like I said, I'm committed to getting more of those people on this show because I want to tell their stories, who don't have the glitz and the glamour and whatever, but man, they built a forever business. They built a legacy income, a business that they could will to their children or their grandchildren.
So good. I have a question for you, and I think this is going to be a loaded question to unpack. And I think the best way for me to ask it to you is, what do you think are the characteristics of a company, meaning company and corporate, and their leaders, their field leadership team that need to exist to have success? So how do we get corporate and field leadership not so much in sync because they're doing different things, but working together, that everybody really knows their role? Because there seems to be a lot of confusion between corporate and field leadership. And I think the great companies have figured that out, because the field leaders know what they need to do and they go out and become amazing at it. The corporate guys and gals know what they need to do and they become amazing at that. But we don't see that a whole lot. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. And that's another reason why I want to bring in more of the corporate people in this Chopping It Up series too, because I think it does develop those relationships. Because the thing, like I was consulting with a company and they would say, well, we talked to the leaders and they say your idea is a bad idea and we don't want to implement that because they don't want to do it. And I'm saying, but you don't understand. You're not using the discernment of whose opinion needs to be evaluated at the proper level of reverence. Like, you're going to change the comp plan. Okay, let's say you are overpaying in your plan, you're busting the cap every month, you realize, hey, we need to create a new comp plan. You can't call up 1,000 distributors and say, hey, we're sending you a Survey Monkey link, fill this out, we want to know how to design the new comp plan. They have no idea in the world how to design a compensation plan. It's a science. There's not, honestly, my opinion, I'll get beat up for this, but I don't think there's more than 7 to 10 people in the world who are capable of designing a good compensation plan. And I'm counting myself as one of those 7 to 10 people. So you can call me an egotistical, maniacal, arrogant son of a bitch. Okay, but I believe that. And I believe that there's really 8 or 9 other people in the world who can do that. And you got to talk to someone like that if you're going to do the comp plan. You're going to make a change, right? If you say, if you just do a survey of your leaders, you got, 250 diamond director and above, or whatever the rank is with your company, and you say, okay, guys, how do we make the company better? Of the 250, 247 of them are going to say the products should be cheaper and the comp plan should pay more. And 247 people, that will be their response, because they're not sophisticated enough to know the distinction. And I'm glad you watched the show with Jeff Higginson. Anybody listening, if they didn't listen to the show with Jeff Higginson, and then also the show I did with Daniel K. Song, we did a deep dive into comp plan design, and where I believe there's 3 pressure points of comp plan. There's what the beginning leader makes at first. There's what the top level makes, and then you have this trigger point, which is some kind of the first substantial rank where people get serious about the business and they start buying plane tickets and traveling and building long distance lines. And you have to have enough money in the middle of that plan there, or the company won't grow. If you put all the money at the bottom where you say, oh, okay, everybody who joins can make $1,000 their first month because we have this incredible fast start bonus, that's going to come from the leaders at the top. And they're going to say, well, I got 70,000 people on my team and I only make X amount. And I was at the mastermind event and I met 5 people who have the same size team as I do, and they make $25,000 to $40,000 a month more than I do. So I love you guys at the company and I love the product, but I'm going to go build over there. You create this leadership drain and no company's going to survive that. So this is such a science on how you got to do that, right? So of those 250 people, you got to find the 3 who understand that dynamic. And that's why I say that the show I did with Big Higgy, because he related the story, or I don't know which of us brought it up, where I was at $125,000 a month, and I went and I was on the distributor advisory board, and I said, I want to cut my bonus check. I want it to go down to $100,000 a month instead of $125,000, because we need to put more money in the middle of the plan where that trigger point is. And I know if I do that now, I'm going to make $25,000 a month less for this year. But long term, that's how I'm going to get my check to $200,000 a month or $250,000 a month. You have to find the people with discernment, and then at the same token, you got to find the right people at the corporate. Right? There are people in our space who believe no distributor is worth $50,000 a month. But if they get to $50,000 a month, find an excuse and terminate them, because they already brought in the majority of their people they're going to bring in. Most of those people are going to stay because they got golden handcuffs. So find some bullshit reason you can terminate them. And, and they don't see the value of a leader who could make $200,000 a month. So the sane, discerning people have to prevail, right? The people with discernment and sophistication in the field have to find the people with discernment and sophistication in corporate, and you guys have to take over the dialogue. I have clients all the time that, like, particularly if they come from the big companies, right? I had an exec, and he had come from, one of the biggest companies in our profession. And he wanted to do focus group for a new product we were developing for the taste. I'm like, do you really need to spend $200,000 on a focus group? There's 5 of us here in this product development committee. And the problem was they wouldn't tell the CEO the truth, right? We were developing and I'm not going to say the name of a company. I don't want anybody beating me up. But we were developing a product you consumed by drinking. We'll put it that way. So they send samples to everybody in the original ingredient deck and and everybody's doing their evaluation, and everybody, oh, this is great. And so then I'm the last one to speak, and I'm like, did anybody drink that shit? It tastes like shit. And the texture is horrible. I know we're in a hurry, and I know we have a deadline, and I know we want to get on to the packaging and the branding and figuring out the cost structure, but the product tastes like shit. This is a dog. Take it behind the barn and shoot it. We got to find a better product. You got to have people willing to do that, right? And in this case, it's a very strong CEO, and nobody but me would tell him the truth. He's assembled people around him who tell him what he wants to hear. And that's a recipe for disaster, just disaster. You've got to create an environment where people can tell the truth and be respected for that, and not do it. I don't tell the truth to beat someone up or make them look bad, or because I want to play internal politics and try to expand my influence or my turf. I'm like, no, like when I consult with a company, I have these performance bonuses, right? That if they reach a certain amount, I get a $250,000 bonus, or I get a $500,000 bonus. So I want to get those bonuses, right? I need the money. So I don't want to put out a shitty product that, everybody's going to get all excited at the convention, and everybody will buy 10 boxes at the convention. But 60 days later, nobody's going to be reordering that stuff because it's overpriced and tastes like shit, right? You've got to create that relationship. And this is, companies have to do real distributor advisory boards. And they have to be really judicious and mindful of who they appoint on there. You can't appoint people for politics. You can't appoint them for friendships. It has to be a meritocracy based on results, people who are actually growing the business and active. It's great this guy's making $100,000 a month, but if he stopped working 7 years ago and he's just on autopilot, he's not a good guy to have on your advisory council, because he doesn't know what's going on in the field right now today, right? It's, he couldn't post an Instagram story of his life dependent on it, right? So you're going to put him on stage at the convention and have him talk about social media? No, why would you do something? So same thing if he's checked out or she's checked out. And then, I feel as distributors, you have to be willing to fight for your team. And if you have to go in and bigfoot it, because you're the top income earner or you're one of the top people, and you have to go in the office and pound on the desk, then you got to do that, because you got to, the moral of the story for both is, and every culture has the story. In English, it's the story of the golden goose. The goose who laid the golden eggs, I guess, is I don't remember if it's Grimm Brothers or Disney or I don't know who, whatever the original book was. But you need distributors who are willing to say, yeah, you know what? We really do need to change this comp plan, and I need to be willing to take less money for a certain period of time. Or, hey, we need to be willing to make this change, and I've got to be willing to do this extra amount of work for this certain period of time because I've got to protect the golden goose. I had two high ranking distributors who got terminated in the company we worked together from my team. One of whom was the number 2 income earner in the world. I was number 1. He was number 2. And another one was a top leader I had who had opened up the country of Germany for me. And in both cases, I was the one in corporate headquarters saying, you have to terminate my guy because what they're doing is going to get us closed down. And as much as I love them and have that relationship and that friendship with them, and it's even though they make me so much money each month, if the company gets shut down, there's no money for anybody, and we're all going to be out of work. So that's you just, people have to be willing. Field leaders have to be willing to give the benefit of the doubt to the corporate people, and the corporate people have to be willing to give the benefit of the doubt to the field leaders. And again, in both cases, find the ones who are discerning enough and have the self-awareness enough that they can go up to 40,000 feet and look down at the situation objectively instead of, most people knee-jerk decision is, I will never support any decision that makes me earn less money, or I will never support any decision that makes me have to work harder. Some of the fires I have to put out these days, I'm going into companies and I'm making them redesign their comp plan, and I'm building in customer benchmarks, because they don't have a viable customer base and they're just a ticking time bomb waiting for to get shut down. And so I'm going in. And so let's say the rank is executive president, in a field rank, and the executive president has $100,000 volume a month, and they personally sponsored for regional presidents or whatever, and I'm saying, okay, and we need to add one more thing that says, and they have 10 retail customers. Well, this executive president doesn't have 10 retail customers, never have, because they built on, hey, just sell the big kits, just get the builders, customers don't matter, the distributors use the product themselves. Well, you know what? That worked great in 1996. It's not going to work in 2023. And if you want to keep getting that $125,000 a month you're earning, you better develop 10 customers and set that culture with your team that everyone else develops, because it can be the supervisor needs 2 retail customers and the manager needs 4 retail customers and the next level needs 6. But at this level of Starfleet commander, they should have 10 customers. And I mean, it's shocking how many of those people will fight me in a death match to avoid doing that, even though it's the right thing, it's the moral, honorable thing, it's the smart business sense thing, and it's going to prevent the company from getting closed down where they make $0 a month. But they're just, wait a minute, you're making me do something I haven't had to do. And now, so I'm the godless communist heretic who comes in, from the outside, and they want to drum me out of the company. But I'm really just there trying to protect the golden goose, right? So listen, one of the things, you mentioned hockey. That's one of the things I had for you. I think, first of all, I don't know anybody explained this to you, so maybe I should be the first. Black people don't play hockey. Did somebody not explain that to you?
Yeah, right. You know, it's funny, Randy, my hometown, Fredericton, the first ever black hockey player, his name is Willie O'Ree, that played in the NHL for the Boston Bruins. He was from Fredericton.
Wow.
They now built an arena and named it after him, the Willie O'Ree Arena. But,
Wow.
you know, I didn't realize I was half black until I was probably 10 years old, right? There weren't many black folks around when I grew up. In fact, Atlantic Canada didn't have a lot of culture, if you will. It's predominantly white.
Yeah.
You know, but today it's different with all the amount of different people migrating. Canada's got an open border. They just bring everybody who wants to come. You can come. But no, it's hockey was always something that I loved, and I grew up playing hockey. I think now it's more fun watching my son grow up and play. And I guess this is one of those moments. He played his last high school game just a few weeks ago. And so you imagine, you know, your kid being like 3 years old and you're tying his skates in the cold winter rinks, and now they're 4 and they're 5 and they're in the little leagues and they're working their way up. And now my son was in grade 12 and he's in the playoffs here just a month ago, and played his last game. And all those memories from all those years of all the trips to the rink, to all the tournaments, to all those, it just hit me. And I'm just like, wow. So tomorrow, well, my Elena and my son Tyson left for Mexico yesterday. So they're in Mexico. I'm leaving tomorrow with my daughter, and it's kind of his graduation trip with a bunch of his friends. But here we are, like he's in grade 12. He's, you know, going to start college next year. But hockey, yeah, it's something that I loved watching.
Yeah, and you're still playing yourself. The other day when I called you, you were just leaving the hockey rink. What did playing hockey teach you that helps you grow your business?
Well, hockey's a team sport, right? I don't know if there's really anything that helps me with my business, but the team atmosphere. I mean, there's people that have never played team sports, and to build a team in business, they're not going to know how if they've never played a team sport. Just like, you know, you in baseball. I mean, the team makes that old saying, the teamwork makes the dream work. I don't have any real answer to that. I think learning to build a team, but I think for me, it's always been, I just care about people first. I've always cared about this. I used to teach early on. I used to be a teacher.
Right.
And I did that, and I worked with disadvantaged kids. And
amazing.
Yeah, and I never thought I'd do anything but that until I learned about network marketing. And when I came into this profession, that mindset of wanting to help people, that's where it's always started for me. And that's why today I have a hard time when I see people trying to manipulate the system or get on a stage and tell a story that you and I both know isn't true. I heard you in one of your podcasts, maybe with Higginson, talk about that. You were offered some kind of maybe taking over an organization or some kind of bonus money, and you said no, because if I accept that, I could never write another book, or I could never get on a stage again and tell that story. But, you know, it's amazing to me how many people are willing to get on a stage and tell something that's not true. You know, so yeah, hockey's a beautiful thing. It's something that you like. And I didn't know it was late in your life when you started playing baseball. I mean,
I didn't start till I was 40, because my mom didn't have money for any of the equipment, for any of that stuff. And I was such a pathologically shy, bookworm, nerdy kid. You know, I was this fearful, buck-toothed kid who sat in his room all night listening to WISM, you know, AM radio, playing Casey Kasem's Top 40 Countdown and reading books because I couldn't relate to the other kids, you know. And yeah, it was when I was 40 that I was like, man, I could do this now. I have the time, I have the money, I have the freedom. Let me find a softball league that I can go join. So, and that's been just such a joy to my life. That's just, and for me, I don't know if hockey is that for you, but I am a ferocious worker. And I love Mondays. I throw the covers off the bed. I'm always eager to get into my work week because I shut down on the weekend. Saturday by midday, I'm done. And then it's the batting cage and then dinner or dates or friends or movies. Sunday is softball, very quiet, meditative day. And then Monday, I am fired up, charged up. But I could easily work all day, every day and never shut down. And then I burn out. But the one thing I found is softball. When I'm on the softball field, I don't ever think about work. I would never think of checking my phone, think of checking my email, even wondering what's going on at the office, the business, my line here, my business there, my project, none of that. It's true, get out, sweat, get the fresh air, get the sunshine, and challenge myself.
What a gift. I mean, most people, unfortunately, never find that thing that they can love doing outside of their day job. And they go through their whole life like that. I mean, to hear, I've listened to you talk about softball for, 15, 20 years now, and you love softball. No one can deny that Randy Gage loves softball. You talk about that World Series stuff like it's the World Series. Yeah. And, and getting to the batting cage, just the way you just described it, but I think we all, if I'm going to be really transparent, I realized through the pandemic stuff, I started not laughing as much. I started not being as happy. And other people wouldn't know, but my wife knew. Mm-hmm. It's like, you're just like, you're too serious was the phrase that she would use. And I think it's so important that, because my kids bring that laughter. My kids bring that joy. My kids bring the funny stuff. But I mean, to hear the way you've always talked about softball, if we could all have something, this business can be part of it, but something that just takes us away from whatever we consider reality of these things that we need to be attached to all the time. Especially now, if people can throw that away for a few hours or a day, or imagine a week. There's a lot to be said about finding something that can take you to a place where you just forget about everything else.
100%. Everybody, you need some outlet for that. And part of that is family and relationships. And that was one of the things I had to talk to you about. Because when I met you, you were a wild child. And now you are this loving, devoted, doting husband and father. I mean, it seems like that's a really, really integral part of your life.
Yeah, it's everything. I mean, a handful of years ago, so Elena and I have been together since 2009. So however long that is, I'm not that great at math. And it was 2017, somebody came to me that I respected, and they said, Ivan, why aren't you married? I'm like, I don't know. Things are pretty good. Life's good. I just, no real reason. And he taught me something, because I was on a spiritual journey. And I know you've had some spiritual conversations on these podcasts. And I've always been a believer in God. And, I don't judge anybody for whatever they believe, but I just always believe there's something bigger than us here, and something that's created us, something that we can connect with. Anyway, he taught me something. He said, there's a good life, and then there's a godly life. I'm like, never heard that before. Uh-huh. And he goes, you live a good life. I'm like, yeah, thanks. I think I live a pretty good life. And he said, it's all about how you line your priorities. And he said, number one, put God first. I'm like, wow. I looked at it that way, meaning put God first. So here's what this guy did. He went out into his office and he grabbed a big pitcher of water. It was full. And he had 3 glasses. So I had 2 of them in my hand. He had one in his hand. And he started pouring the water in this glass. and this is over his desk, beautiful office, starts pouring this water into this first glass, and it starts flowing. He goes, this first glass is God. And the water starts overflowing into this other glass I'm holding. And he goes, that's your wife, your spouse. And the water's flowing over. And underneath that's your children. And underneath that's your kids or your work.
Uh-huh.
And I watch that. He goes, if you believe God is love, if you put God first, God will flow into your marriage, will flow into your children, and flow into your work. And I broke down like a baby.
Wow.
I was like, I've been doing it wrong, because there's a good life and then there's a God life. And ever since that moment, I devoted my life to put God first. I don't always listen to what he tells me, but I try to. But yeah, and it's just changed everything, because now there's this overflowing love that's way bigger than me, pouring into everything that I do.
That's amazing. That's wonderful. What else has changed? Because you've had times you really struggled and were trying to figure it out. And then you figured it out, and you've had some really amazing level of success that a lot of people would love to replicate what you've been able to do. What have you learned, or what do you do different, or what was the magic secret? If you could go back and talk to your younger self, or if you have a new person who's watching this and they just started 3 days ago, what's made the difference for you?
Well, Randy, nobody can deny that you're a genius. You really are. You are a genius. You're one of the smart. You ever watch that movie, Good Will Hunting?
Yes.
I love that movie. Do you like that movie?
I love that movie.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite movies. And in fact, Will always reminded me of you. And for whatever reason. But he's just a genius. You're a genius. I see that there's a picture floating around of you with hair when you're like 7 years old or 6 years old, and you got like a bowl cut going on, and you could tell you were a reader. You know a lot about a lot of stuff. And so I say that because I've learned so much. So for me to tell you what's been the secret, I feel really small saying it, because you are so brilliantly smart. I'm not super book smart, but I kind of get some common sense concepts from time to time.
And you have but I believe everybody has genius. I have a certain kind of genius that I had no control over because I'm on the autism spectrum. So I have which is a blessing and a curse, okay, because of the social anxiety I had and my inability to make small talk and be, accepted as a normal person. And then there's other times that it's really helpful for me. But but everybody, I believe, has their genius in different ways, and you have your genius as well. So there's nothing to feel small or tiny about in that question. I really want to know what's working for you? What have you found? What have you discovered?
Yeah, I think number one, you got to believe in what you're doing. I really do. If you don't believe, and I mean believe, it's kind of like that faith thing, right? You gotta trust. You gotta really believe in what you're doing. The second thing is you got to go to work, and it can't be just words. People are always saying, people say that I've decided to do this. I can't be just words. It's got to be so real. It's got to be their truth. Maya Angelou said many years ago, words are things. The first time I heard that, I was like, stop me in my tracks. What do you mean words are things? No, words are things. Those harsh words that hurt people, those loving words that embrace people. So words are things, but you got to really believe whatever it is you're going to do. And sometimes you got to believe in somebody else until you can believe enough in yourself to do it. So I think that's number one. Number two is you got to go to work. And number three, you need things like this. So I dug some fun stuff out here for a minute, and I'll save the best one for last. How to build a multi-level money machine. I forgot that I had a lot of this stuff.
Burn that book.
Right? Signed, right? Oh, this is the new version of it. I didn't even realize.
Burn that too.
Was it not, this stuff not accurate anymore?
No, I wish everybody who had it would burn them and get the new one, Direct Selling Success, because that's really updated to everything we do now.
Now, hold on. I gotta show you this though. So I love this. So look, I'm just giving people an example. Like you gotta be willing to learn. You got to invest in yourself a little bit, right? But check this out. This really tells the tale.
Oh God.
Look at that.
Hopefully everybody is listening on the podcast. They're not watching this on the YouTube.
Look at these. I've got all kind of stuff, Randy. This is from like the 70s.
That, I'm telling you, that was one of my favorite workshops, the MLM Power Weekend. I had a lot of fun with that.
You know, so you got to be willing to learn. I think you got to really want to surround yourself with like-minded people. I don't like that phrase, they or those people, because we've created a lot of categories now this last few years.
Yeah.
You want to surround yourself with people that are going where you're going. You can disagree and still love one another. Yeah. We can. I love, and I'm bringing up Ori and Sally again. Listening to you two talk, it was so enlightening because there's some things that you really disagreed on, but you love each other.
Yeah,
like that's maturity. So to answer your question, I think it's just maturity. Yeah, I was. I remember I wasn't going to bring this up, but you brought it up a little bit. We won't get into any details, but I remember sitting down at a breakfast table with you in some city somewhere. And you're like, looked me in the face and you're just like, dude, you got to sort some stuff out. And this is not how we do things. You know, Jeff Higginson pulled me aside another time. He said, when much is given, much is expected. That were life-changing words to me. I'd never want to disappoint Jeff Higginson. I'd never want to disappoint Randy Gage. These are people that are helping my life get better. But if you don't have the right tools with money, you don't have the right tools with some of the people you're spending time with. You know, we see it all the time. Money can destroy people's lives because they weren't mature enough, or we learn a lot about people when they have access to different things. Yeah. So I'm just grateful that I had a chance to go through some stuff. Like you've gone through some stuff, like everybody goes through stuff, but we want to learn from it and we want to get better in our industry. If you're not careful, or our profession, whatever we want to call it, there's good people. There's amazing people. There's a few bad ones. And it's like Jim Rohn says, sometimes they just move around a lot, those bad ones. Yeah. And, yeah. You know, it's so the industry can kick your butt, or it'll challenge you in every way. And I'm just grateful that it challenged me a little bit to get better. And I just always want to keep it real. I can't stress enough. Like, I want to keep it real. I want to work with real people. I want to spend time with people who want to make a difference. People that are willing to do the work. I'm tired of the deals, the backroom deals to get people in there. I'm tired of the fake stories. I just want real. I'm okay with that. So the secret is just doing it, never giving up, continuing to surround yourself with good people, listening to podcasts like this all the time.
Is there any other podcasts, books, something self-development you're on right now that you're excited about?
You know who I love, and I don't know if you watch him at all. Ed Mylett.
What's the last name?
Oh, man, Randy. Ed Mylett.
Mylett.
So here's the Coles Notes version. He was a network marketer. He's one of the wealthiest people in the world today, but he started in network marketing in the financial company. Ed Mylett's got a massive following. Like his podcast, he's got everybody, the who's who of everybody on his podcast. But Ed is, you know, within minutes that he's the real deal in every area of his life. There's nothing fake. There's nothing. He's just so great. So he's written a book called The Power of One More. The Power of One More. It's an easy read. For me, it was the best book It was the best book I read personally since like the old Jim Rohn stuff when I fell in love with him at the beginning of my career. Now, I'm not saying these books aren't all amazing too. That's not what I'm saying. It's not a network marketing book, but
Right.
the power of one more, he teaches people to get up one more time. Do one more rep than the guy next to you. Take one more swing in the batting cage when everyone else did 12, you do 13. But give yourself one more chance.
Yeah.
When you fall down. It's Ed Mylett.
How's it spelled? Mylett?
No, Mylett, maybe two T's. Mylett.
Okay. We'll put a link in the show notes for people to the book.
In fact, a lot of people in our profession are following him as of the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for him. And good for you. I'm glad you found something you were so passionate about.
Well, Randy, listen, you hear it all the time, but you can hear it one more time. I am grateful for you more than you'll ever know. I want to apologize for kind of not communicating for some time. And because you just have such an important part of my journey and my story. Like if it's that top 5 people that have impacted your life, there's top 3 or 2, it's you. And I'm forever grateful for you. And I'm more excited about what the future holds and how we can grow and build and spend time together.
Yes. Well, first of all, I'm very honored and humbled by that. And I am so glad as well that we just got connected again. And I'm excited about it. I know you're about to embark on a new adventure, and I'm really excited about that for you. And we'll have to bring you back. Everybody I've had on, I'm gonna get back at some point, I think, and do a volume 2 or a volume 3 or volume 4, because the value that people are getting out of these kind of real world conversations that you can't even. I couldn't even write a book with this kind of value if I wanted to. I couldn't create a seminar or a workshop with this kind of value, no matter how hard I tried, because of it's just the synergy that happens of getting to iron sharpens iron. And that was the premise of all this chopping it up. Is just, I know so many brilliant people who are doing amazing things. And a lot of them, if I didn't drag them into doing this show, that knowledge would never be shared with the world, because they would inadvertently take it to their grave, because nobody sat them down. It's like I just bought this service for my mother where it's not really for her, it's for my nieces and nephews. They email her once a month and they ask her questions and say, tell us about your mother, or what was your favorite games you played when you grew up, or what. And each month we get to, I set it up with my sister and we can help choose the questions. So and then they created like an album every year of this stuff that you pass on to the children or the grandchildren or whatever, to capture those stories that would never be told otherwise, and preserve them for posterity. I feel like this chopping it up is that for network marketing, and not even for network marketing. It's for empowering leadership. I honestly believe, and call me delusional, but I really, really believe at some point this series will be on Netflix or Apple TV or HBO Max or some kind of streaming service. In addition to and it's blowing up on the podcast, because obviously with the long form content like this, it's a lot of people, it makes their life easier if they can do the podcast while they're jogging or bike riding or treadmill or things like that. So we, made that available. So that's helped the reach. But I think 10 years from now, 15 years from now, somebody be watching this show with Ivan Sisco and saying, oh my God, that story he told, that is the missing link that I needed. So thank you for being a part of this, my friend.
Thank you, Randy. Appreciate you so much. Really do. Thank you.
All right. For all you guys watching, listening, like, subscribe, share, duplicationnation.com, and we will see you again next Wednesday. Same bat time, same bat channel.